Okay, today we are talking about the reciprocal parent function. The equation for this is y equals 1 over x. That's where the reciprocal part comes from, because reciprocal is a flipped fraction, so the reciprocal would mean x on the bottom. So this is the parent equation, the parent function equation. We are going to graph it off to the side. Let's make a little t-chart here to help us graph. And let's go from -2 to 2. All right, positive numbers are always the easiest to graph, so let's do that first. If I plug in a 1 for x, 1 divided by 1 is 1. If I plug in a 2 for x, 1 divided by 2 is 1/2. All right, let's plug in the negatives. 1 divided by -1 is -1. 1 divided by -2 is -1/2. The 0 is where it gets tricky. You cannot divide by 0, so right here there's an error if you try to type that in your calculator. So we'll get to as to y in a second, but let's go ahead and graph what we have. So we've got -2, -1/2, -1, -1, +1, +1, and then +2, +1/2. It's hard to see the shape, but if you were to use a graphing calculator or some kind of online tool, it would look like this. The fancy name for this is a hyperbola. There is a horizontal asymptote at y equals 0. So that means that the graph is never going to cross this line. There is also a vertical asymptote at x equals 0. So the graph is also never going to cross this line. Because of these asymptotes, that kind of messes with the domain and range. So let's do domain first. There's a lot of different ways to write domain. But we'll start on the left and go to the right for domain. So we've got an arrow here. We do have an arrow here, but it stops right here with this asymptote. So the domain goes from -infinity. You never include infinities because you can never arrive there, comma 0. We never actually arrive at 0 because of the asymptote, so this is curved. Union, we start again here. It is an arrow, but it starts technically at 0, not included, all the way to positive infinity. Range will be the same thing, bottom to top. We have a gap also at 0, so the range is the same. Notice there are no x-intercepts, no y-intercepts because of these asymptotes. And that's really it. We're going to take this and do some transformations to it, but this is where you start. It's a hyperbola, and we got an asymptote at 0 and 0 to start.